Something important for us to review is subject and object. We've talked about it a little bit already. We're going to talk about it in more detail now. So, what is the subject? Which is which? The subject is the person or the thing that performs the verb action in a sentence. The subject does the thing, all right? And it can be any kind of noun. It can be a common noun, a proper noun, an abstract noun, a concrete noun, or it can be a pronoun, like he or she or it. The object is the person or the thing that receives the verb action. So the verb is performed on or to or at this person or thing. And some examples. My sister plays piano beautifully. So, what is the verb action? It's plays. That's the verb. That's the thing that is being done. The subject would, of course, be my sister. And what does your sister play? What does my sister play? The piano. All right? So, my sister is the subject, plays is the verb, and piano is the object. The piano is receiving the action of playing. Now, something that's a little bit difficult sometimes, not in that very simple example, but in more common and regular writing and also speaking, it's difficult to identify the subject, to figure out what is the subject of this sentence. So the subject can be just one word, just one name, let's say, or it can be a long group of words that have adjectives or multiple nouns at the same time. So we're going to do a little exercise where I'm going to give you sentences and you're going to see if you can find the subject. So they're going to start kind of easy and get harder. A big fat cat was sitting at our door today. What is the subject of this sentence? What do you think? Give you a second to think about it. It is, of course, a big fat cat. All right, so the cat is the noun and big fat are the adjectives. Next one, I made our guests some tea. What's the subject? This one's easy. It's I. I did the thing. I did the making. I am the subject. Lisa's dog and James's cat love to play in the back garden. What's the subject? So, Lisa's dog and James's cat are the subject. Both of them together because they're doing it at the same time, or maybe they both like to do it at different times. I don't think dogs and cats play very well together usually. But in this sentence, they are both loving playing in the back garden, so both of them are the subject. Finally, the teacher whose child got into a fight at school drove past our school today. So, this is a hard one. What is the subject of this sentence? What do you think? So it should be the teacher whose child got into a fight at school. This is a very long one, but if we think about it, we can see it's still just one thing, right? It's still the teacher, the whose child, blah, blah, blah. Those are just extra details. The teacher is still the subject. The teacher was doing the driving. And now that we've identified the subject, let's try and identify the object. So again, the object can be just one word, or it can be something quite long. So, the same example. The big fat cat was sitting at our door today. What is the object here? What do you think? So the object would be our door. So our door is receiving the action of the cat sitting. I made our guests some tea. Now, what is receiving the action here? What is the object? The object would be some tea. And we're going to see that's a difficult one. We'll see a little bit more about that one later. Lisa's dog and James's cat love to play in the back garden. Object? The back garden. They are receiving the playing. The back garden is the recipient. There's a good word for you. Recipient of the play. And the teacher whose child got into a fight at school drove past our school today. The object would be our school. Now, as we saw then with the guests and the tea, sometimes it can be a little hard to figure out which one is the object. And actually, we can talk about something important, which is indirect objects. So some sentences have two objects, a direct and an indirect object. And so far, we've been talking about the direct object. So the T was the direct object. This is the object on which the verb action is performed. So we were making the tea, not making the guests. The indirect object is the person or thing that receives the direct object. So the guests received the tea. We made the tea, the guests received the tea. So the tea was the direct object and the guests were the indirect object. So another example, I gave the gardener a lift home. The verb action is to give, gave. Who does it? I do, so I am the subject. And what did you do? You did a lift. And who did you give the lift to? The gardener. So I is the subject. Gave is the verb action. A lift is the direct object. And the gardener is the indirect object. So now that we've reviewed direct and indirect objects, we're going to do a little quiz to finish off this video. So I want you to identify in these sentences the subject, the direct object, and, if it has one, the indirect object. Now, I'm not going to tell you which sentences have indirect objects and which ones don't. You have to figure that out for yourself. Maybe all of them do, maybe none of them do. You have to remember the rule and figure it out for yourself. So let's take a look. He threw the ball to me. My mum passed the salt and pepper to her sister. The children went to play at the park. Love and forgiveness will set you free. The teacher gave us extra homework for the school holidays. She gave her son some money, and she gave some money to her son. So pause the video and figure out the subject, the direct object, and the indirect object. Pause and have a try now. All right, welcome back. Let's take a look at those answers. So first of all, he threw the ball to me. So he is the subject, and the thing that is being thrown is the ball. So that is the direct object, and the indirect object, the person who receives the ball, is me. My mum, the subject, passed the salt and pepper, that's the direct object, to her sister. Her sister receives it. She's the indirect object. Now this one didn't have an indirect object. The children went to play at the park. Love and forgiveness will set you free. All right, so love and forgiveness is the subject, and you is the person who is becoming free. So it's you. You are the object, direct object. Then, this is a hard one. The teacher gave us, so the teacher is the subject, us would be the indirect object, and then what do we receive? Extra homework. Thanks, teacher. So we get the extra homework, which is the direct object. She gave her son some money, so she is the subject, and the money is the direct object, and her son is receiving the money. He's the indirect object. And she gave some money to her son. It's the same. Notice that it's a different order, but the grammar logic is the same and the meaning is the same. So that is a review of subject and object. It can be a little bit confusing, I know. So if you do have any questions, make sure to send me a message. I'll be happy to help. And in the next video, we'll be moving on to a different topic for review. So I'll be waiting for you then.